Hello, hello, and welcome to episode 75 of Mad Knitting. My name is Susan. My pronouns are she, her, and no, she, hers, and I'm glad you're here. Today is Wednesday, January 15, 2025. The beginning of the apocalypse, maybe? I don't know. You can find me elsewhere online as madtownmama on Ravelry, madtown_mama on Instagram for now, and madtownmama on Bluesky. I just joined Bluesky earlier this week because, or maybe it was last weekend, after the owner of Meta announced that they were going to do away with the fact checking, like as pitiful as it was. There was some fact checking on their platforms, and they are eliminating their DEI department. So people are kind of fleeing Instagram. I haven't left yet. I'm still there, still active. But I don't know, if it becomes unbearable, I might have to leave. What can I say? We have billionaire tech giants with fragile egos running the world and controlling a whole lot of the information that we can consume. So that sucks. I wish I could stop it. I'm not really sure how to mitigate my own participation in it because I'm still like online and want to connect with people. So I guess we'll just see how it goes. But anyway, you can find me on Bluesky, and I will have a link to all of that stuff in the description box below this video. So I have this YouTube channel to share about my crafting life, which is mostly knitting and whatever else I feel like talking about that is related to that in some way, shape, or form. Today I have some finished objects, a few things in progress, and I actually have a little bit of sewing to share with you as well. In fact, I thought that I might have enough to do like a whole separate episode just on sewing projects, which I have done once or twice before, but I don't think it's quite enough to warrant like a whole separate video. So I'm just wrapping it all up into today. Let's start with what I'm wearing. This is the Watercolor Pullover designed by Neilan. I love it. I made this a couple of years ago. It went really quick because it's made out of bulky yarn. I used Barrett Wool Co. Bulky Twist for this main color. They've got about 4 or 5 colors available, and this is one of the lower contrast ones. A couple of them, like what they do is apply 2 different colors of their home worsted together, and some of the colors are very high contrast and have a very like distinctive marled look. I liked that this was a little bit more subtle so that the contrast colors, which are just solids, this is Northampton bulky from Webb's, discontinued years ago. I had some leftover bits in my stash. I just really liked how this looked combined with the Barrett Wool Co. I don't wear this sweater terribly often, mostly because it is so very warm. The bulky wool, the fact that it's a pullover means that it is very, very warm, and I only want to wear it when we are experiencing very cold temperatures outside. Today it is actually, I think, getting close to 20 degrees Fahrenheit out there, but there's still a wind chill in the single digits. So I've actually been wearing this all week because it's been pretty cold and it's very cozy. It's a very good choice. I highly recommend this pattern. I very much enjoyed knitting it. I found the instructions were clear. I really like how it fits. And one of the things, I was thinking about this when I was wearing it earlier this week, that I really like is that the color work pattern is really quite simple. And that works in the bulky yarn because when you have stitches that are this big, it's either like a 13 or a 14 stitch gauge over 4 inches. It looks like very pixelated almost. It's not a good like canvas, if you will, to do some kind of really distinctive picture design. It's just very like geometric shapes, you know, kind of zigzags and diamonds and stuff. And I think that really works at this scale with the yarn. I'm also very, very pleased with how the yarn is holding up. I said I don't wear this sweater terribly often, but I've worn it enough in the last couple of years to observe that it has worn quite well. There is some pilling on like the sleeve if you really look, but it's not bad. It doesn't look too raggedy, and I really enjoy wearing it. Also it has this fold over collar, which I think is a very refined feature. Okay, let's get into finished objects. The first one I'm going to share, I had started just before my last episode and I finished it already. This is the Heart Warmer Cowl by Justyna Lorkowska. It's all finished, all blocked. It is so pretty. I don't even have finished object pictures taken of it yet because I just haven't. It's not that there's been no time. I just sort of haven't had the mental bandwidth for it, I guess. But I did have enough yarn. I'm going to hold it up close so you can see. This was really fun to knit. I think it was a little bit less than 2 weeks of knitting time, and I pretty much only worked on this when I had time to knit in those 2 weeks. So, you know, it's just this long tube. You start at the bottom with this ribbing, and then there are these different sections of texture that are, you know, no two are the same. Kind of like a sampler idea till you get to the ribbing at the top. So it keeps your interest. It's never boring. There was this lace pattern that was very easy, an interrupted rib, baubles. If you don't like baubles, you could put in beads, I guess. Kind of a garter rib. This smocking was a new technique to me. It's very easy, very fun. I was afraid it might be like complicated or fussy, but it wasn't at all. Very easy, different lace pattern, and then the ribbing again. So there you go. She does call for 3 different needle sizes, 3s for the ribbing, and then either a 4 or 5, kind of depending on which stitch pattern you're working on during the main part of the cowl. I didn't swatch, I just followed her instructions, and I think it came out really nice. So the yarn I used, oh, and I have something else to say about the yarn. I was gonna bring something else and I'll go get it in a minute. This was a gift. A little over a year ago, I participated in a gift swap, and the yarn was sent to me with that. It's from Silver Pennies Yarn Co. That's the label. The color is called Fuschia Fury, and it's a blend of superwash merino, yak, and nylon. So it's very luxurious. And it's a typical, it's like fingering weight, 437 yards per 100 grams. So that's like a pretty standard skein for sock yarn. The pattern called for more than 500 yards, or it called for one skein of a yarn that comes in over 500 yards per skein. So I wondered if I would have enough, and I did. In fact, this is what's left. I haven't weighed it, but it's probably enough. I could have added another couple of rounds of ribbing on either end, and that would have been it. But that's perfect because I wouldn't know what to do with a lot of leftovers, and so I have this for repairs or trim on something else, but I pretty much used up that whole skein. Now, this yak blend, it is superwash, so theoretically I could stick it in the washing machine. But because there's yak in it, and because it is this gorgeous, like deep magenta fuchsia color, I really wanted to make something that I could have next to my face and wear on my neck. One of the other reasons that I didn't want to make it into socks was because I have another pair of socks made out of a similar yak blend. I don't think it's exactly the same base, but it's a similar blend, and I'm gonna go get those socks and show you what happens after you wash them a few times. So this is a pair of socks that I made maybe last winter, maybe the winter before, I don't remember. I'm pretty sure I talked about them whenever it was on this channel. It's some kind of large commercial brand, German brand, Schackenmeyer maybe. But do you see the black fuzz all over them? I'm pretty sure that's the yak fiber that has worked itself loose in this pair of socks, except at the bottom of the foot, which is interesting. You know, the toe, like the ball of the foot and the heel, where there's the most friction and the most pressure, that's where there is the least amount of fuzz. It probably just wore off completely. But I find this really interesting. they're just socks. It doesn't affect how they feel or how they fit. Although it's possible they may have shrunk a little bit, like felted, I don't know. But I still wear them. They're very warm and comfortable, but they look kind of bad, honestly, with the pilling. And I didn't want another pair of socks that was gonna do that. And I figured, I don't know if it's the way the yarn is spun or the yak fibers themselves just like to work themselves free, but I wanted a cowl out of this, and that was one of the reasons. But what I wanted to say about these socks was I thought maybe it's just a matter of depilling. So like I have one of those little simple depilling combs that has where you can just sort of scrape off the loose fibers and make the fabric look smooth again, and it absolutely did not work. Like, even though these fibers are working themselves loose on the surface of the sock, they aren't just coming off easily. They're still pretty well, I don't know, somehow embedded with the yarn. And it's definitely on the outside, not the inside of the sock. So I just thought that was interesting. In case any of you have made socks out of a yak blend, have you had this experience? Or, you know, anything else that sees a lot of wear and friction? I don't know, this was my first time with it. So I thought that was interesting. Okay, my second finished item are a pair of socks, the vintage Tinsel socks. These are a gift for someone. I started as a holiday gift. Obviously they're a bit late for that, but I think that's okay. I've shared these at least once or twice before now. You can see how sparkly they are. And I'm calling them vintage Tinsel because that's the name of the color. So I used West Yorkshire spinners. My first time with this yarn, I really liked it. It's their signature 4-ply, and it's a sparkle colorway. You can really see it here. Self-striping, obviously. This is again typical sock yarn. It's 75% wool, 23% nylon, 2% polyester. I suspect that's the silver thread running through. And this is 437 yards for 100 gram ball. There is a lot of this left. Again, I haven't weighed it. I'm not meticulous enough to do that with all the projects that I make, but there's quite a bit left. Like, I should weigh these and weigh this and see if there's enough for another pair, or in combination with something else, if I could squeeze another pair out of it. It's softer than I expected it to be, considering this is a very hardy sock yarn. Like, it should hold up pretty well. So I think this will be a really good gift for the person I have in mind. Just quickly, I use size 1 needles, cast on 66 stitches. This is how I do like almost all of my socks. 1x1 rib, stockinette for everything. Since this is self-striping yarn, I did a garter stitch short row heel. I like the texture and the look, and I think it hides those wrapped stitches better than stockinette. And went on my merry way down to the toes. So that is finished object number 2. Finished object number 3 is probably my oldest work in progress I've ever had. And I was inspired to finish these, I should say, by the fact that I had made a pair of mittens for my son for Christmas. I talked about those in my last episode about how I'd finished them. But I've got this pair of Midlothian mittens that I started for myself. I thought it was maybe in 2018, but when I was digging around in Ravelry to find the project page, I found a 2017 tag here. And I'm pretty sure I started them on the spur of the moment during a very cold week in January. That's typically when we get our coldest weather. So these are probably an 8-year-old work in progress that I finally finished. Now, if you watched my last episode, I had a lot to say about the process of knitting this pattern, mitten pattern, because it has a lining. So you're essentially knitting 2 pairs. You do the outer layer first, which is the fun part. It's the color work. And when you cast on, there's one round where you double your stitches, put half of them on waste yarn so you can pick them up later and do the lining. And it gets a little tricky because you have to make sure the lining is exactly the right size, and it's a little bit tedious because you've already knit the whole pair to begin with before you do the lining. And anyway, it's a whole thing. Well, it took a little bit of work, but I did get them done for my son. And I thought, you know, I've had these around forever. I could definitely use another pair of mittens because I do wear them out pretty quickly. I might as well finish these. So I dug up some lace yarn to use for the lining. This is left over from another project, I think a shawl project. I don't know if it's like clear at all. I am pretty sure that I know this is lace weight. I am pretty sure that it is 100% alpaca lace yarn from Knitpicks. I think they call it Shadow, and I don't think they have sold it for a long time. I bought this years and years ago. I don't remember why, but I used some of it in this shawl project in combination with something else. And considering it's lace weight, this is probably quite a bit of yardage here. So because it is so fine, I thought, well, this will be good to use for the lining because as you can see, the mittens are very fitted on my hand. And I was a little nervous about how a lining would be too bulky and make the mittens fit too tight. I mean, you can like see the shape of my hand here. So I picked up the stitches and I used this yarn and I got, you know, past the thumb decreases up to about here, I would say, on the liner of the mitten. And as I looked at it, I could see, and I wish I had taken pictures, but I didn't. So I can't show you pictures, you know, photographic evidence of this, but I could see that even with the thin yarn and stuff, the lining was wider than the mitten. So it would have been all bunchy in there. It would not have worked. I could have re-knit the whole thing with a smaller needle. But at that point, I think this was like a week ago, like a weekend ago. At that point, I was thinking, I'm just ready to be done with these. I am tired of knitting linings and doing the guesswork on the fit. Plus, maybe these mittens were just not meant to have a lining and actually fit my hand. So I ended up ripping back to just below the thumb gusset increases. And man, this light's bad. I will try to take a picture and insert it so you can see better exactly what I did. But I did a couple of garter ridges, so that it wouldn't curl, and then I just stitched it to the inside, kind of like you would do like for the brim of a hat. So they're done. I can wear them now. The one bummer is that I have this extra layer of warmth right around the wrist, which is not the coldest part of my hands when I go outside on a very cold day. It's where I really want it is in the top part where my fingers are, but I think this worked out for the best. Again, the pattern is Midlothian Mittens by Chau. Great pattern. I highly recommend it. If you have the patience to knit the whole lining bit, go for it. If you don't, you could always just leave out that increase round and just knit the outer layer and leave it. It comes in 4 sizes, so you've got flexibility according to gauge and what size you're trying to knit. And as you can see, it's a pretty simple like pattern repeat on the color work, very adaptable for different lengths as well because you don't have very many rows before it repeats. So it's just a really good, well-written pattern and I really enjoy it. I think if I wanted, I don't know if I'll make a 3rd pair because I've got many other things in my life that I would like to knit, but if I were to make another pair, I would probably aim for a little bit bigger size and then just knit a separate pair of liners that were not attached. And then you'd have that option about whether you want to wear them or not, and it wouldn't be quite such a big deal if they were bunchy, you know? So those are all of my finished objects. I have to say though, that as I was working on these mittens and finishing them up, it felt so good to have a project that is 8 years old, finished and done with. Like, check that box, have that closure, right? Then I thought, you know, rather than start a lot of new projects now, I think I would like to go on a finishing spree. So even though it's the it's the beginning of the year and it's very tempting to cast on new projects, and it's the self-indulgent knit along, which is a make along run by the Yarny X podcast that I've talked about before, where you cast on and finish something self-indulgent within the winter months. I decided I'd rather finish some things. So the first things I have to show you are some socks in progress. I will go through those quickly because I've shown them before and there's not a ton of progress, but I figured I might as well, just, you know, for posterity's sake, show you where I'm at with those. Okay, I'm out of breath because I realized I had left all those projects in different places around my house and had to go collect them. Let's start with the dog food tweed socks. For my dad, I can't remember if I've actually made any progress on these since I last told you about them, but I'm getting pretty close to the toe. I know what size shoe my dad wears, so I need to like check this against a sizing chart and start the toe when appropriate, but I have a feeling I'm pretty close to there. So these are dog food brown because he once told my son that his favorite color was dog food brown. It was sort of a joke. Anyway, this is a lovely, I think it's lovely, light brown color called Rabbit Heather in Stroll Tweed from Knitpicks. Knitpicks has a new website design and it's kind of terrible. I'm trying not to purchase so much yarn, period, especially from like large corporate producers, so it's just as well. And then I'm using Oyster Heather for the cuff contrast. And I may put Oyster Heather at the toe as well, just to balance it out for fun. But yeah, these are a gift from my dad. Again, I was sort of hoping to get these done for Christmas, but it didn't happen. I'll just send them when they're done, and I think he'll appreciate them. They have had, okay, so my parents live in Kentucky, and they've had more snow than we have this winter. They had this huge snowstorm like a week and a half ago that just, I mean, it was like 6 inches of snow and then a bunch of ice and then more snow. So it absolutely shut everything down. School was closed for a week or almost a week. You know, they couldn't really go anywhere for a few days, and we've had nothing, just a few flakes here and there. It's not fair. And then they had more snow that Friday. I think it's unfair because I like to get out there and play in it. Yeah, so he could have used these that week because it actually also got pretty cold and snow didn't melt right away. But he has rather narrow feet, so these are a 72 stitch cast on with size 1 needles, and just, you know, basic 2x2 rib at the top, stockinette for the rest, and then for these I do a heel and gusset, which is my favorite heel construction for fit. I will show you, I have one skein of the yarn with a label still on it so you can see. It's pretty nice. I've made several pairs of socks out of this yarn, but have not actually kept any and worn them for myself, so I don't know how well they wear, how well they hold up, but they feel nice, so that's good. Second sock in progress. I've showed you these a bunch of times and I've like barely made, oh no, my needle came out. I've barely made any progress on these as well, and I'm about to lose some stitches, so I'll be very careful. These are the yarn is from Ewetopia, one of my favorite Wisconsin producers. This is a commercial base that they've hand dyed, but they also have a mill. This is the color Kamalanomenon, and man, it makes me so sad to work on these because we could be inaugurating her next week, but no, we're not. We are installing a fascist instead. These are a gift for someone who I know will appreciate them. I love this bright purple color. It is so joyful and exuberant. And I've hardly worked on these except that I did bring them along with me to a rehearsal last night. I am actually singing with a choir. There is a really amazing choir in Madison called the Madison Choral Project. And up until now, it was just 24 singers, all professionals. And they're just fantastic. Like one of the best groups I have ever heard perform live. And they actually opened up auditions to community members for their concert cycle happening this winter. Because I think they just needed to beef up. They just need a lot of voices because there were so many parts in the repertoire they're doing. So I sent in an audition video and they asked me to sing Alto 1, which is really cool. So there was not much opportunity to knit during rehearsal because we were really working. But at the beginning when there was sort of some introductory stuff and we weren't singing, I just was knitting away on my little sock. So got a teeny bit of progress done there. Okay. So those are, the sort of ongoing older projects I have going. Here is a newer cast on that I think I shared last time as well. There's more ribbing to show you basically. It's not super interesting, but this is a hat for my niece. I'm going to make them matching or coordinating hats, hopefully in time for Valentine's Day. We will see. The bright blue is for the older one who is really into these colors. And then I have a red that I will use for the younger one. White contrast for both. I'll show you the pattern in a sec. This is yarn I got on sale when a local place was closing down. It's Plymouth Electra Light. And it again has this strand of silver running through. I don't know if it's showing very well in the video, but it is quite sparkly. And so sparkly and soft, sort of like that West Yorkshire Spinners yarn, although it's not as tightly twisted and I don't think it would be as good for socks because I don't think it would hold up as well. But sparkly, bright, fun. And the pattern I am doing is called Lumi Light by Jessica McDonald, which features this really beautiful snowflake motif. But for Valentine's Day, for my nieces, I thought that was perfect. So yeah, not much to share there because I haven't even gotten to the color work part, but I will. I think I want to spend the rest of January not starting anything new, but finishing what I can. Not holding myself to account for any specific number or yards knit or anything like that, but it is very satisfying to knit things to finish what I've started. So here's what's been occupying my knitting time the last few days since I finished those mittens. I showed this before when I started it and it got set aside, I think, for gift knitting. Sadly, because man, do I like working on this. It's a plain cardigan. This is for me, by the way. And I love every stitch that I am putting into this. It's such a satisfying, this yarn is you just want to pick it up and feel it and squish it. It's just such a great tactile experience. So I guess I'll tell you about the yarn again, because again, I've shared about this before. It's just been a while. And then I'll tell you what pattern I'm making. I got this when we went to New Zealand, which is one of the reasons this is so special. We were there end of March into beginning of April. It was our last big family trip together before my son graduated from high school. He's a college student now. It was just incredible. It's one of the most beautiful, incredible places I've ever seen or been to. We just felt it was an amazing experience going on that trip. And I did buy yarn while I was there, one more skein of anything and my suitcase might have popped open. So I took advantage of the New Zealand wool that was available. So this is a really big skein of not very well branded yarn. It's Naturally Big Natural. It is all New Zealand wool. I think it is even processed in New Zealand. Made in New Zealand. And there's an Auckland address on here. Oh, there's a website, so I'll make sure the website goes there, goes in the description box too. But the shop I was at they were selling clothes and they had a whole yarn section. So they had this is natural colored charcoal gray yarn, which is, I have a hard time finding natural colored charcoal gray. There's a lot of creams and browns out there, but not gray. This is DK weight. They had like DK and bulky in these big skeins in about 3 or 4 different natural colors. So I bought enough of this to make a sweater. When I swatched, it was really working up to closer to a worsted weight for me than DK. I'm getting 19 stitches over 4 inches on size 7 needles, and that's the fabric that I liked. When I go down needle sizes, it feels too stiff and dense. So this is going to be a cardigan, pretty basic. There are a million basic patterns out there these days for cardigans. Any gauge you want, you know, any neckline treatment, it's not hard to find. But I had this on hand. It's this book called Uniform, published by Matter in Maine. I don't know if they're around anymore. Carrie Bostic Hogue is the designer of the sweater pattern and she does the photography and like came up with this whole concept. She partnered with Grainline Studio to do a sewing pattern that goes with it. It's this tunic that the model is wearing under the sweater. But the whole idea here is that there's one basic sweater pattern in 2 different gauges. So the gauge I'm doing and a finer weight, plus this tunic pattern that comes with sleeves or without sleeves and kind of different length options and stuff. But you know, there's different customizations, but it's 2 basic patterns, one for sewing and one for knitting, that you can do in a whole bunch of different iterations. And this came out maybe 10 years ago, so it was sort of that time when there was a lot of capsule wardrobe stuff, and minimalism was really, as an aesthetic, was really gaining a lot of traction. And we could talk about that. We could talk about how minimalism is sort of materialism by a different name, but I find the aesthetic very appealing, and I love the idea of having one pattern that can work in a lot of different ways. And I own the book and I have the yarn, so here we are. Now, a couple of nights ago, I got to where I thought I was ready for the sleeve divide, did that, got a couple inches down, and when I looked at the sweater, I thought that the yoke looked a little short. I mean, it matched exactly the measurements in the pattern, but it was like not even 7 inches from the neck to the bottom of the raglan increases where the divide was. And I tried it on, and sure enough, it felt tight. I'm not sure why she designed it with that size in mind. Maybe people used to, I mean, like, it was pulling up under my arm, not comfortable. Now I think the trend is to have really deep yokes, which is not my thing. But anyway, I wanted like a comfortable sort of typical, normal, I don't know what you call it, easy fit. So I pulled it out, just knit a few rows to make it about 1 inch deeper. And I think this works really nicely now. So I don't even know how much I'm going to need to use the pattern from here on out. I need to get to the bottom, do the edging, put the sleeves on, pick up for the collar, you know, just typical sweater stuff. There's nothing very distinctive about it other than its garter edges, and the V shaping is pretty deep, so it'll have a pretty open neck up until you get to the part where you button. But I think that's how I want it, because this is warm wool. Okay, that is it for my works. What time is it? Oh, I'm making pretty good time considering. That is it for my knitting, finished and works in progress. And I do have a little bit of sewing to share with you, as I mentioned at the top. You know, I got to see my nieces for not even 24 hours over Christmas, over the holiday. And they still, as I've said and talked about, they still love the things that Auntie Susu makes for them. I finished those sweaters and finally got them sent. And in fact, today they arrived and I got a text from my sister-in-law saying that they were so soft and beautiful and she thought that they would love them as soon as they saw them when they get home from school. Anyway, every time I see them, I'm all inspired to make them more stuff. So I got the hats going. But I did some cleaning out of my craft space at the end of the year, as I often do, and found fabric that I had bought with the intention of making things for them. And I thought, I better do this now. They're gonna grow out of, pretty soon, they're gonna grow out of the age of wanting to wear handmade clothes from me. So I made a dress. This is for the older one. Her birthday's in March, so I will give this to her for her birthday. I'm gonna show you the dress. This is the front. This is the back. I found some purple buttons on hand that pretty much match the stripes. So this is like a light aqua color. It's a quilting cotton with kind of a lavender orchid, I don't know, kind of a light purple thin stripe going down, which lines up with the grain of the fabric, which made cutting out really easy because I could just match the grain line to the stripe and not have to measure. What should I say? There are little pin tucks in the front and there is an exposed facing on the outside, which is kind of a neat feature. Pin tucks in the back as well. The sleeve have just a little bit of gather. It's more to fit into the armhole rather than be truly puffed or gathered. And I very much enjoyed making this. So let me tell you about the pattern, because good sewing patterns are... I will try all kinds of knitting patterns and experiment with all kinds of different designers that, you know, are new to me. But with sewing, I am much narrower, much more choosy. I'm not as confident with sewing. Like if I run into problems or mistakes, I don't always know how to fix them. So if I find a brand or a designer that I trust, I tend to go with that. So this is a pattern I bought ages ago, back when I thought I would like hand make my kid's entire wardrobe. I don't know what kind of trad wife like aesthetic I thought I was embodying, but it didn't happen. But I bought this pattern. It's from Oliver and S, which is part of Liesel and Co. This is called the Family Reunion Dress Pattern. And I don't even know if you can buy paper patterns on their website anymore. I'll put links, but they used to have sales every once in a while, and I'm pretty sure I got this during a sale. But there were like 2 size ranges, so I got the bigger size range. Fortunately, this goes up to a size 12. But there are 2 options for views. There's the dress length, and then there is like a blouse length, which is just like if I had cut this out, but it was like this long instead. So it's more like a shirt. That's the main difference. There is a decorative option that I just left off. You can either do this little ruffle down the front, or there's like a little false button band in the front. I just didn't want to mess with it, so I didn't include it. But I really like it. I really like these patterns. The person who runs this company is a trained professional. She's been doing it for a while. So the instructions are very good. I mean, they're not too wordy, but they tell you what you need to do in the order you need to do it. And the pieces fit together. And with one exception, there was a shirt I made once years ago that was a little too short. But other than that, like, I have had very good luck with this pattern company. And I made a couple of different things for little kids. So recommend. I know she has a book out there about like making dresses, like all these different customizable pieces that you can put together to make dresses. That was a little more than I wanted to get into, so I haven't looked at that or bought that book or anything, and I don't think I will, but it's out there just in case anybody's curious. So I really enjoyed making this. It went together in like a weekend. Oh, the other feature I will show you, which I think adds to the sort of finished quality of it, is, I mean, it's a big curved, the hem is very curved, and you actually cut out a separate facing piece and stitch it on and then hem it up on the inside rather than just turning up the hem. I think for the shirt option, you turn up the hem instead of having that whole facing, but it looks very nice, and you enclose, you know, all the raw edges in the corner of the button band, and it's just really nice. So I liked it enough that I traced and cut out the pattern pieces for a smaller size for my younger niece, and I am planning on making her just the top version, not the dress version. The older one seems to like wearing dresses, although I think I'll make her a top version as well, just because now that the other thing about sewing is, like, once I figure out how to do a pattern and see how it goes together, subsequent iterations go much faster. Like, now I've done it, now I know the order of things. As long as I know what size to make, I'm like off to the races. One more sewing project to show you. This was sort of a spur of the moment thing. I had one day this month when I wasn't like busy with things. I've had either work or playing work or rehearsals or something like every day, except last Saturday. I actually had like a whole day free of obligations. It was wonderful. And I went down to my craft area to put her around, and I decided to make myself another needle case for double pointed needles, because I have a lot of wooden ones. I just bought a bunch of Liquid needles in different sizes, and then I have a few sizes of Lantern Moon, this ebony wood. And I thought that they need their own case because the packaging they came in was coming apart and not very pleasant. So I found a scrap of this like cotton linen blend, sort of a heavier weight fabric. This might be cotton and steel, I don't know for sure. And a contrasting orange to make the pockets. And I just sort of measured how big I would need to have a double layer of pockets for a bunch of double point needles that will fit nicely in there without being too tight or too loose. And I marked the stitching lines where to sew the pockets, and then I have like a buffer here to fold it up into thirds. For the flap, by the way, I cut in a little bit so that it won't stick out when you roll the edges around. Probably could have done that a little more. And then I did a row of stitching. I like folded the flap over and did a row of stitching just to help define, can you see? Define where that fold will be and hold it down. So the only thing I might change about this, I just didn't feel like adding a tie, because that would have been like a whole separate set of calculations. So if I ever wanted this to like stay firmly closed, I would just get a ribbon and tie it separately without it being attached. But that's not really a big deal, because mostly when I have whole sets of needles, they stay at home. But I'm really happy with how this turned out, and it's like sturdy. I put interfacing in all the layers, and yeah, this was a nice little project. So that's all the crafty stuff I have to share. I just, you know, in case you're interested, I just thought I'd share a couple of sort of media things I've been consuming lately. In my last episode, I mentioned that I read the book Night Bitch by Rachel Yoder, which I loved. It was fantastic. And the other night I watched the movie, which is available on Hulu. It stars Amy Adams, who is just fantastic. Hi, it's the next day. I'm in a different place in my house. I got cut off unexpectedly yesterday, right at the end of the video I was making, but I wanted to go ahead and finish a few thoughts before, you know, ending this episode. So I'm in my basement now. The lighting is poor, but that's okay because I don't have more knitting to show you. I was just saying that I had watched the movie Night Bitch on Hulu because I just finished reading the book and I really, really liked the book. And I very much enjoyed the movie. It stars the actress Amy Adams, who is fantastic, and the little kid that plays her son is absolutely adorable. I wonder how they filmed that, because this child is probably about 3 years old, and you know, how do you make a 3-year-old do anything? So I imagine they just spent a lot of time playing and reacting to things and getting what they needed that way. Anyway, I just wanted to say quickly that as much as I enjoyed the movie, I liked the book better. There was a whole storyline in the book about other mothers being involved in an MLM, which they totally left out for some reason. It was actually a pretty interesting subplot, and the way they handled the ending, I just thought wasn't quite as compelling as in the book. But I recommend it. It's a good watch. And it's like under 2 hours, which is another point in its favor. The other thing that I've been thinking about is I've been watching videos by the content creator Hannah Alonso lately. She's pretty well known, at least, like, speaking of MLMs, she is an anti-MLM podcaster or YouTube person. Pretty well known. She is very good at breaking down the way these companies work, why they're so scammy, why they hurt people. And she does it with a lot of kindness and empathy at the same time, like not pointing fingers at individuals, but at the structure as a whole and the way the people at the top are taking advantage of everybody at the bottom. But she also has a series of videos called Influencer Insanity, where she will look at the behavior of influencers online, often on TikTok, and kind of break that down as to why it's often dishonest or created just to kind of inflame people, like rage bait sort of thing. But she had a video very recently, like a week or two ago, about overconsumption and haul videos, especially like makeup hauls. And it got me thinking, because I'm watching the examples she's showing where people will bring home like literally bags full of stuff from Sephora or other, I mean, Sephora's the main one, but there's other makeup stores, I guess, like where they'll buy like hundreds of dollars worth of stuff, or they'll have videos where they show how they organize. They have like an entire room full of beauty products, just like hundreds of lipsticks and skin creams and I don't even know what. But I found myself feeling a little bit stressed watching those because there is so much waste. There's no way one person can use all that stuff. There's just so much of it. It's like hoarding. It's not entirely healthy. But I was thinking I should not be judgmental about this, because how many of us are sitting on like a huge yarn stash and are showing some similar behavior in the way we've acquired things for our crafting habits? I don't think it's exactly equivalent, because for one thing, beauty products and skincare things will expire. You have to use them up by a certain point or they will go bad or not be effective. Whereas yarn and fabric will not. You do have to protect against pest damage, but as long as, you know, nothing's eating it or nesting in it, like, it's something you can use indefinitely. Or if you're not going to use it, it's something you can like send on to somebody else, like rehome. More than, like, you couldn't send somebody used lipstick. That's disgusting. But you could certainly, you know, I've done this plenty. If you have yarn that you realize you're not going to use, or that's, you've got too much for a project, you can always find somebody to buy it from you or to take it from you. But it did get me thinking about overconsumption and how that has just gotten so rampant thanks to the internet and thanks to social media and influencers convincing you that you can solve your problems and fill the emotional holes in your life by buying things. And that's just not healthy. So I really am committed to using what I have, and that's not to say I won't ever buy yarn again, because I think that's a ridiculous commitment to make. It's going to be hard to stick to. But there is a lot to think about there. So thanks for watching. That's all I have for you today. I will see you next time.